For the second video, we're going to look at a couple ways our perceptions are filtered. I've already talked about a couple actually. Our experiences, our frame of reference, that's going to filter our perceptions of others and their perceptions of us. Personality, certain strong, enduring characteristics to or predispositions to behave or view the world in a certain way. That's personality. That, as you remember from the earlier definition, that's another thing that's going to through which our impressions are filtered. A third thing, though, is something we haven't talked about. It's called attachment styles. And this came out of some fascinating research about infant attachment with caregivers. I won't go into super detail in the video, but what we learn is that people attach to others in different ways. And I don't mean literally physically grab onto people. I mean, like, psychologically we have different types of attachment to others. And more recent research has found that adults have different attachment styles. So I'm going to go into this, and I think when I do, you might be able to see yourselves or your friends fitting into certain styles like this. This is one of those things that also any of these styles probably has some advantages and disadvantages. So I'm not going to make one out to be the ultimate great one or horrible one, but they're interesting, and they're based on a combination of two things. Our feelings or our working mental models toward two things: ourselves, our feelings about ourselves, and our sense of ourselves. And the second thing is toward others. So our feelings toward others, our sense of others. So let me explain how this breaks down. Someone with a secure attachment style has a positive regard for themselves and others. So if we have a secure style, we're fairly positive toward ourselves and others. If we feel good about both of those. Avoidant, more negative. We have negative opinions of ourselves, and we have negative opinions of others. Dismissive, we are more positive towards ourselves, more negative towards others. This doesn't mean we totally dislike others, by the way. It just means we don't feel that same sense of warmth and attachment towards others. But we feel we hold ourselves in reasonable regard. Doesn't mean we're super arrogant or anything, but we're comfortable with who we are. Preoccupied, it's the flip of dismissive. Negative for ourselves, positive for others. So we value others, we like others, we value them, but we are not necessarily secure with ourselves. So in terms of how our feelings about ourselves. So I'm going to show this information graphically on the next slide so you can get a sense of how it breaks down, and you can start to think about what difference this might make in communication situations. So this is our model of ourself, these top two things. We feel positive about ourselves, negative about ourselves. Don't worry about the dependence part. I stole this graph from these two yahoos. But don't worry about the dependence part. Just think about the positive and negative of self, and then positive and negative of others. So for positive of others and positive of ourselves, that's secure. So this group is comfortable kind of navigating all the different areas. They're comfortable being close with others, and they're comfortable being on their own. So because they're fine with both themselves and others. And then fearful, or what I called avoidant on the previous slide. Some people call it fearful avoidant. So so just know them by the term fearful, the term avoidant. Reluctant in terms of both intimacy and worried about rejection. So it doesn't necessarily feel that they're worth others' acceptance, but not exactly quick to accept others either. So you can imagine this person being fairly unattached and more distant from other people. This person You could see this person, the secure person, varying. So they're comfortable being close to others, but they're comfortable being apart. This group, the fearful or the avoidant, are more likely to be distant in a higher percentage of situations. Dismissive, probably less needy or inclined to want to be super close, and more comfortable being on their own. It doesn't mean they never get into relationships. It just means the closeness that they feel in relationships might be a little bit different. Their closeness needs are different because they kind of get that from themselves. They're like, all right, fine, I don't necessarily need a super close relational environment. It doesn't mean they're horrible people and that they're totally detached. Just they're not as attached as these two at the top. So the two that have a positive working model of others. So the last one is preoccupied. Really value attachment in relationships. Really want to get attached in relationships, but because they kind of doubt their own self-worth, they struggle with it. And this one I always view with a little bit more empathy than the others, just because it's a challenging situation to be in. You want to be in relationships, but when you're in them, you doubt your place in the relationship. You doubt whether the relationship is secure, whether the person really wants to be with you. That's a pretty challenging mix. So that's why the sense of preoccupied. Like, there's just a lot of worrying with respect to relationships that you don't necessarily see with the others, because they really want to have good relationships, but even if they had one, they wouldn't necessarily see it that way because they would be doubtful of themselves. So you can start to picture how communication would be different. If you have kind of a friend who is a little bit more needy, they doubt themselves and they really worry if you're not following up with them, they might be more preoccupied. You have someone that you want to be close to and they're perfectly fine, they get along and everything, but maybe a little bit more distant, comfortable with some alone time, they don't need that closeness, then that might be a little bit more dismissive. Someone that kind of balances those, is more secure. And someone that's kind of resistant in both ways is more avoidant. I would caution you to, against just sizing up all of your friends automatically and assuming you've got it nailed. There could be other things going on there, other things driving their behavior. But this might, in some cases, help you explain why people approach the issue of closeness and attachment differently. The only thing I want to say about this slide is going to be incredibly quick, and there's nothing you have to write down, and I'm not going to include this on the quiz. But remember those questions I had you do at the beginning of the semester? If you want to apply some of these ideas to small talk, those questions, and especially the group that accelerated in terms of how intimate they were, are a good example of how to go through some of these stages so you can find things in common, so you can increase your social attraction to others and they can increase theirs to you, so you can make good first impressions. So those questions can be good to help navigate through those types of situations. So that is not everything there is to know about developing relationships, but there are some important things in there. And in the next video, we'll move on to maintaining relationships.